Welcome, Sens Talk.
He bats it in! Tim Stutzler wins it for Ottawa! Triple Grant is going to put the finishing touches on an Ottawa win. See you later. Go Sens, go!
Welcome to Sens Talk. My name is Brandon Plant, and I am your host. Today we have a lot to talk about. I made it a point not to wear my Nordiques hat for this video. I thought that probably would have been a little bit too much. But all jokes aside, this video I'm going to break down and discuss the controversy around the Ottawa Senators. What are they doing in Quebec City? We're going to talk about that in this video. But, I want to treat this video as not just, a report on what happened. This is a video where I think the organization can truly learn a lesson and take notes. And to kind of, most of all, reinstill some trust and show a difference from the previous regime. So before I begin, I just want to say that this video, sure, it's meant as a report to inform you on what happened and why this controversy got so large. But more so, it's meant as constructive criticism for the organization. I think, I'm sure there's a decent chance somebody in the organization's watching this right now. I don't say that for really any of my other videos. If you watch my videos, I often make that joke. If you're a member of the organization, why the hell are you watching? I think there's a reason they're watching this video, because there's a reason the fan base got so upset over the events of yesterday, over this Quebec City thing. So this video is meant, sure, to inform, but also, most importantly, to provide some constructive criticism for this new regime and this new ownership group. Remember, everyone's quick to draw the comparisons between Michael Andlauer and Eugene Melnyk. I've seen those comments already on Twitter and on other platforms. That is ridiculous. But I also understand why passions are so high and why members of the fan base are so heated over this. My goal with this video, kind of on that note, is to ensure that this fan base gets the respect it deserves, and our thoughts, why this is the way it is articulated in a concise way that anyone can understand and makes it as easy as possible. I don't expect people to understand the whole lore of the Ottawa Senators over the last decade, 2 decades, 3 decades. I don't expect it. So I'm going to do that for you. I'm going to try to keep it as concise as possible to accurately explain why this fan base, rightfully so by the way, was infuriated with the announcement of regular season games, potentially in Quebec City, the push for Quebec City in general, and most of all, for the desecration of our jersey, our logo on our Spartacat, there being the Nordiques and Sens logo being cut in half. That was just a bridge too far, I think, for a lot of people. So again, all in all, what I'm trying to say is this is an incredible opportunity for the new ownership group, the new regime, whatever you want to call it, to noticeably take a different approach than the previous regime did in past years. This can, once and for all, build that trust between ownership and the fan base, which we can still see even with new ownership. It's not there yet. That relationship still isn't there yet, and that's not on Andlauer. There's a lot of wounds and trauma from the Melnyk years. That's not Andlauer's fault. So while I think this was definitely a massive blunder by the Ottawa Senator organization, especially with messaging, and we're going to get into that in this video, I do think this is a really good opportunity, and we've already seen it with, Cyril Leader, the president of the Sens, going on TSN 1200 yesterday. Ian Mendes immediately tweeting out and saying that fans should DM him for feedback. He wants to hear their feedback. That already shows a willingness from the organization to take steps this organization in previous years would never have taken, but that's my point. This is an opportunity for the new ownership group and the new organization to take a different approach that builds and, strengthens the relationship between the organization and its fan base. A fan base in which, for years, has felt deep distrust and deep resentment in the ownership group and the organization as a whole. So this is an opportunity for Andlauer to change it. I think we're already seeing it again, as we'll talk about later, but I just want to mention again, representatives of the organization already answering questions head on and open to feedback from the fan base is a great sign that they are learning, they're going to do better, they're listening to us, and they're taking a different approach. But again, to understand why we got so upset is to understand the scars of the past ownership group, and that deep resentment and deep distrust we had. Remember, this is the fan base that literally did a GoFundMe to put up, billboards around the city saying Melnyk out, saying the owner, you gotta go. This is a very passionate fan base and a very emotional fan base because we're sick and tired of feeling like pawns in a bigger game. for myself, for example, I've been to almost 10 games this year. You know, I've supported the team as much as I can. There's a lot of other people like me, season ticket holders particularly. You know, especially imagine you're a Gatineau fan right now. How are you feeling? It's kind of a slap in the face to advocate for outreach and regular season games and a merger seemingly between a defunct franchise and your Ottawa Senators when we have fans like myself and others in the city that have supported the team for a long time and don't deserve to lose regular season games to a city that we have nothing to do with. We owe nothing to Quebec City. While I love the city, we owe nothing to Quebec City. If the National Hockey League wants to go back to Quebec City, then the National Hockey League should take care of that. It should not be us as pawns in the middle of this chess game that lose out on regular season games and lose out, frankly, on our own identity. I mean, again, we're sick and tired of hearing these rumors about us moving to Quebec City. And now they're resurfacing again. That's really the main root of it all. So basically what happened is, that's a lot of spiel. Let's just get into what happened. The Senators yesterday announced a couple of late September preseason games against the Habs and Devils in Quebec City. Great. No problem with that. In fact, some of the training camp will be in Quebec City. Great. No problem with that. If you're a longtime hockey fan, you know these teams always go on retreats with one another to build team morale and camaraderie before the regular season. This is a perfect opportunity to do that. Quebec City is a beautiful town. I was just there recently. It's a great place. It's beautiful. And it's a perfect spot for them to really just bond and get to know one another and to just kind of create that team chemistry. So no issues with that. I think Andlauer took it a step too far when he starts talking about, you know, regular season games being played there. Because again, right now, the only thing that we have that's official is that there's 2 preseason games being played in Quebec City next year. And by the way, this is what's really interesting. It kind of begins to start the question of what is the goal here in Quebec City for the Ottawa Senators? There's no government involvement on this plan. Last year, I believe the provincial government of Quebec gave Quebec City like $7 million for when the Kings played there. We're supposed to be getting 0. So there's no government involvement. It's entirely on the Senators' own initiative that this even happened. So with that context, it's a little weird. It's a little weird. What's the goal? But hey, whatever. They're playing in a cool city. It gives them an opportunity to, again, build some team camaraderie. No issues with it. But then in that press conference yesterday, and this is when things really started to get heated. It's like, you know, the pot starts to really heat up, right? The water starts to boil. You're the frog in the pot. You don't realize the water's boiling until it's too late. That was them, because Andlauer, the Senators owner, in that press conference said that he wants to have Ottawa play regular season games in Quebec City. For me, that's too far. As I've already said in this video, and we'll talk about it later as well, that is too far. The Ottawa Senator fan base does not deserve to lose home games. We're supporting this team. And most of all, this is our team. We're not sharing it with anyone else, right? We're not sharing this with Quebec. We're not sharing this with Toronto, Montreal. We are the Ottawa Senators. So when we start talking about losing regular season games to another city, what the hell is that about? Why do Sens fans deserve that? So that's when things really start to bubble up and start to get a little heated. And then Andlauer says this, and I quote, "We'll start with 2 preseason games, and we'll go from there. For me," and I quote, "that's the vision. That's the vision. If we can play in Sweden, we can play in Quebec City." Well, I mean, that's just not true. There's a massive difference between playing in Europe for a European series to show off your talent and your team to literally an untapped market on another continent, and having your team play regular season games instead of playing in Ottawa a few hours away in the city where for years there's been rumor speculation about the Ottawa Senators moving to. There's a massive difference there. And that's where the constructive criticism of this video really begins. Because, you know, if you had a firm grasp on the history of this organization and understood why this is such a touchy subject, this would never have even been a possibility. Again, preseason is one thing. Regular season, well, now you're taking stuff away from us. Important games that actually matter. That's not fair to the fan base that has supported the team for 30 years. Now, he also directly shut down relocation talk. And right there should have been a red flag for Andlauer and the Sens organization that, oh, Well, this was not a good idea. If they didn't know already, they certainly knew it there. When the Quebec City media was starting to talk about relocation talk. Now, Andlauer, to his credit, I'm going to be very fair in this video. This organization has dealt with this much better than the previous organization would have, I promise you that. Shut down relocation talk immediately. Immediately. So, what's the goal here, though? That's really the question, because they're not looking to relocate there at all, but we're going to play regular season games there to expand, and this is what he says, Michael Andlauer, to expand the Senators' fan base and, grow their reach, so they can have fans there in northern and eastern Quebec and, of course, in the Maritimes as well. But at the same time, in the same press conference, Michael Andlauer advocates on multiple occasions for the Quebec Nordiques to return to the National Hockey League. Now, look, I love the logo. I'm down for the Quebec Nordiques to return, but again, we got nothing to do with that, and that's not our prerogative. Our prerogative is to make the Ottawa Senators the best team possible and to market to the fan base here in Ottawa. And again, as I said in the beginning of this video, if you're so concerned about, reaching out to new fans, just look across the river to Gatineau. I agree with the Sens organization and the importance of reaching out to the Francophone community. That's important to me. And we're going to talk about that later in the video as well. But you have those fans right in your own backyard. Right here. Why are we reaching so far away in a market where at the same time you're talking about bringing a National Hockey League team to that market? It just doesn't make sense. The messaging was mixed. It was confusing. And I think that's a big reason why the pot began to boil over and the frog died, I guess. Because that's when all hell broke loose. Because, again, you're advocating for an NHL team to go there. You're advocating for us to lose regular season games to the same city with no real explanation as to why we're pushing this collaboration. It makes sense why Sens fans felt disrespected, sidestepped, and frustrated. Because, again, with the historical context and just the mismanagement of the messaging, perfect storm for a total firestorm that took place on Sens Twitter and throughout the Sens community when this all happened. But I have to say this, as I already said in this video, literally the cherry on top. People are already freaking out before this. People are acting like the Sparta Cat controversy is what really blew everything open. And in a way, it's true. But that was already there. That was already there because the messaging was not, consistent. The things did not add up because you're talking about the market, but then also about an NHL team going there. So are you trying to get Sens fans? Or are you trying to bring back a fan base? It doesn't make much sense. So you already have that, but then the cherry on top, Sparta Cat, they post a picture on Twitter, which has now been deleted, by the way. Very understanding why they deleted it, and good on them for deleting it, frankly, because we were getting clowned by other fan bases for this. But look at your screen. That is so sacrilege. It's so wrong. And, credit again, we'll talk about it in the later parts of the video, but to Cyril Leader for admitting the wrongdoing here. The Senators' crest, the logo, is, it's a thing that you don't mess with. There's a reason why players in the locker room don't step on the logo. You can't do it. It's an unwritten rule, but no one does it. It's disrespectful. So cutting the logo in half for another team we have no association with, that was a cherry on top for what already was a very disastrous messaging campaign by the Sens organization. So you never disrespect the team crest, and that really just blew everything open already on top of the controversy that was already there. So you're probably asking yourself, okay, well, this is all understandable, but why is this such a sore subject? I get not wanting to lose a couple of regular season games, but is it really that big of a deal? Yes, actually it is. It actually is. Because again, we have dealt with for years previous rumors about us going to Quebec City. Firstly, it doesn't make any sense, and the Ottawa Senators are not going anywhere. I hope Quebec City gets an expansion team, but that's it. We have no involvement with Quebec City. The city is half the size of Ottawa. It doesn't make any sense. Not only talking about the fact that the Canadian dollar makes it nearly impossible for another NHL franchise to operate in Canada to begin with, but I'm not going to get political, so we'll just leave it there. But the point is, the Ottawa Senators are not going anywhere. But that is what's so annoying, because now we're reigniting these rumors after the fan base with the new ownership group. You look at the attendance, in the Melnick era, and then look what happened when Andlauer came. It's huge, the difference. This fan base came back in droves to support their team. And we're not only 2 years removed from rumors about the Ottawa Senators potentially relocating to Quebec City, but more so with legitimate reports saying that, Quebec, the National Hockey League and the Sens organization were looking to play 5 regular season games at Quebec City in the 2023-2024 regular season. I mean, this is something that has pissed off Sens fans for a very long time, before Andlauer. So pushing the same issue is surely going to have the same exact result. Not shockingly, it has. Now, you want to invest in your own community. Now, the Sens have done that more so than the previous ownership group for sure. And I commend Andlauer for the financial commitment he's shown to the Sens organization, particularly the Ottawa community. But the Ottawa-Gatineau community at large has to be the priority here. Now, look, you can't just look at one thing and not look at the other. You can multitask. This is a big organization that's capable of, expanding the market to other regions. However, most importantly, if you want to do something like this, specifically to reach out to the Francophone community, as I already said, just go across the river to Gatineau, play a preseason game at the Slush Puppy Center, build the fan base directly here in Ottawa, not 5 hours away in a market where they either are diehard Habs fans, Avalanche fans that used to be Nordique fans, NHL fans that just want the Nordiques back. Those are 3 groups. That's the majority in Quebec that will just never cheer for the Ottawa Senators. Sure, they'll go to the games, no doubt. They love hockey there in Quebec City. Never doubting that. They deserve an NHL team. I'm not going to discredit that. I think the Nordiques coming back would be great. However, again, the potential to grow your fan base there, it's just not really there. And we'll talk about it in the Surreal Leader quotes. There's a reason as to why they're targeting that region. And that, in terms of the broadcast rights, that makes sense. That makes sense. But again, if you're trying to do this whole, preseason thing, what better way to reach out to the Francophone community again than your Francophone community here in Ottawa? We have a large French community in the city. I'm French. We have a large French community. It doesn't make any sense to look elsewhere when we're not doing enough here. I mean, again, we're doing more than we used to, but we could do more. For example, a preseason game, as I already said, and Gatineau would be brilliant. And I think the Sens should do it, and they might. They've already hosted practice there before. Let's take the next step. Get some real games into there. Because again, remember, not even just for Leafs and Habs, we often see a lot of opposing fans in our arena, like Edmonton, for example, Pittsburgh, for example, Vancouver, for example. I know some of these are Canadian teams, and that makes sense, but the point is, that doesn't happen everywhere. We need to ensure that the next generation of this community are Sens fans. That should be the priority. And again, reaching out to the Francophone community, I think it's a great idea. But you can do so there in Quebec City, sure. But again, the priority should be here. And more so, once again, when you're saying that the Nordiques should come back and they should have an NHL team, how is that not going to take away from the fan base we're trying to create there to begin with? I also want to mention the fact that this timing, with the NCC issues and the fact that the Sens organization and the NCC is going back and forth over a potential deal, there's still no deal signed. Well, the timing is suspicious. I'll just say that right now. But with the lack of an arena deal, you have to understand why this fan base is in such, uneasiness. We still don't have, yeah, sure, they say they're not going to move anywhere, and I don't think they're going to move anywhere. I take them at their word for that, but until shovels are on the ground, that anxiety is always going to be there. Primarily, again, because of the Melnyk era and the wounds from that. And again, as I already said, that's not Andlauer's fault. But he has the opportunity here to do something that Melnyk didn't do, which is to listen to us. And they're already doing that, by the way. The organization is already doing that. But the point very simply is, with this push for regular season games, and most of all, this push for the Nordiques to come back and have the Ottawa Senators somehow as a centerpiece of that, well, it kind of feels like a slap in the face to many fans here in Ottawa to have their owner advocate for the team to play not only in another city, but to cut their logo in half for a defunct franchise that we have nothing to do with. Mix that in with previous rumors and the anger it causes here due to, again, those scabs, I guess you can call it. And it kind of comes off as tone deaf and insensitive. Now, was that the intention? Doubtful. Everything I've seen and heard from Michael Andlauer has been great. I have no reason to believe that he's trying to piss off the fan base. Why would he try to do that? Mistakes do happen, and that clearly is what happened here. And again, look, the Sens are not going anywhere, and I doubt that, Michael Andlauer's intentions, again, were to piss off the fan base and to start pushing the agenda of the Senators moving. That's not happening. That's not happening. Michael Andlauer right away shut down that idea emphatically, and specifically mentioned the importance of the Ottawa-Gatineau community, which I think is great. But, with this announcement being fumbled from the beginning and the messaging being mixed up, is it about the fan base? Or is it about the Nordiques coming back? Well, I think the reality is, until we hear from Michael Andlauer speak to the fan base directly like he did with the Belleville Senator relocation rumors, this feeling of being tone deaf and, that slap in the face effect, if you want to call it, is going to be there. Now, I have a pretty good feeling that Andlauer will speak to the Sens fan base on Thursday during that game against Washington. Like he did with Belleville, he will speak directly to the fans, and I think he will clear this up because I think that's what it's going to take. And one can't fail to correlate the issues between the NCC and the Sens and their frustration with one another right now to this timing of this announcement. Now, look, who can say if that's true or not? The timing is certainly interesting. Obviously, this was definitely in the works for a while before the recent news that the NCC and the Sens were getting frustrated with one another and still unable to come to an agreement. But nonetheless, the timing of the announcement itself, still very certainly interesting. But either way, it makes us fans feel like pawns in a chess game, and it isn't fair to the fan base, especially when we're already sick of people telling us our team is going to go somewhere else. We also need to continue to improve to support the team here in Ottawa and in Gatineau. We're the ones that support this team day in and day out. And I think on the note of, being tone deaf and a slap in the face, I think these were unintended mistakes. And I think that's very clear due to the immediate response by the Sens organization and the willingness to hear out the Sens fan base, listen to the feedback, and take the heat head on. That's not something we would have seen under the previous ownership group. Ian Mendez of the Ottawa Senators immediately commented on the outrage on Twitter and opened his direct messages for Sens fans to provide feedback, to reach out to him, to kind of give their perspective on things, on why they feel so passionate about this whole controversy. A great move by him that shows a willingness, by the way, from the organization as a whole to learn and do better. And then President Cyril Leader joined TSN 1200 in the evening to face questions about this whole controversy head on. And this was a really interesting one. I want to close out the video with this. I spent a lot of time trying to kind of explain why we feel so passionate about this, why it feels like a slap in the face, when it's harmless for some. Definitely was not intended by the org to come off that way, but nonetheless has. I spent enough time on that. I do want to talk about what the president of the Ottawa Senators, Cyril Leader, said, because he had a lot to say, and there was a lot of interesting things. So the biggest thing to me that he mentioned was the fact that, and I kind of alluded to this in my last video, we don't have the contract. We don't know what was signed in that deal between the Melnyk estate and Michael Andlauer and his group. We don't know if that clause of the Sens being relocated is even real. And I think Cyril Leader unintentionally made a bit of a mistake by saying that there is no clause to move the team. I'm just paraphrasing here. But he was unwilling to really talk about the contract, which, fair enough. But he wasn't willing to kind of say that the clause is legit. He said, and I quote, "We're not going to talk about the agreement, but no. He bought the franchise from the estate, and again, he's a man of his word, and he's been pretty transparent on that front. He's committed to the city." And I don't have any doubts about the commitment to the city, but I think it was not shocking he wasn't willing to, talk about specific details of a contract. Fair enough, especially live on air. But at the same time, in a moment like that, when the fan base is trying to explain that they're sick and tired of relocation rumors, maybe throw us a bone there a little bit and be like, well, again, there is some sort of writing saying the team can't move. That's already public info, so he could have just said that again. Him not saying it makes me think that maybe there really is no clause, like I kind of alluded to in my video the other day, that, again, we don't have the writing. We don't know it's actually in the contract. So that was a little bit interesting, but again, can't blame him entirely for not wanting to comment on a legal contract. Fair enough. I just thought that would be important to mention as to kind of fueling the fire of the anguish of the Sens fans and the feeling of uneasiness, especially around the fact that, again, we don't have an arena deal set in stone. But, he also mentioned and clarified some of the objectives of this whole Quebec City push. One of them, he said specifically, is to bring new Sens fans into the fold, and specifically mentioned how the broadcast region is up for grabs. As I already mentioned earlier in this video, that is fair. Outside of Montreal and eastern northern Quebec, yeah, absolutely, that region is up for grabs, and it makes sense for the Ottawa Senators to push. Their stats show that the Francophone community in northern Quebec have pretty good viewership numbers for the Ottawa Senators. They do have an RDS deal, for example, right, with their Bell Media contract. So that makes a lot of sense. I don't blame them for that. But then, as I've already said, and Cyril Leader didn't really mention this, and didn't really talk about this, and I'm kind of upset he didn't really address this. Why, at the same time, you're saying that's the goal, right? And that's the initiative to build the fan base there and to fight for broadcasting rights there. You're also, at the same time, the owner. The top dog in the organization is advocating to bring another team to that market. The messaging just does not make any sense. It just does not make any sense. So, look, the broadcasting thing, that is for sure. I think they should have led with that. Stop focusing on the Ottawa Senators are playing in another city and focus on the fact that the Ottawa Senators are scouting out markets to expand to grow the fan base. That should be the primary goal of the messaging. That's where I think they really, really screwed up. And again, the tone deafness, not understanding the history and why this fan base would react the way they did to such an announcement. Again, regular season games in Quebec City of all places, was a misstep that I think they're going to definitely learn from here. Now, I have to give Cyril Leader credit for this. Just like with Ian Mendes, I have to give him credit. And again, I give him credit for facing the fire head on. Previous ownership would never have allowed this to happen, which shows that this ownership group is willing to admit when they're wrong and to rectify when they're wrong, and most of all, to learn when they're wrong, to not repeat those mistakes. But he admitted that the Sparty thing was wrong, okay? And it was. It was a catastrophic mistake. I don't care what the idea is. I don't care what the reason is. You never, ever disrespect your team's logo and the jersey. You just never do it. I'm glad that he admitted that they made a mistake there. And the last thing I'll mention is he kind of tried to spin the reaction as more positive than negative, talking about how Facebook, the reaction was good, on Sens Twitter, on Twitter as a whole, X, whatever you want to call it, it was mixed. And in the Quebec media, it was overly positive, is what he said. And he said, and I quote, they accomplished their goal. So that seemed a little bit of a iffy choice of words, but, again, he clarified this in a tweet after, admitted his mistake, and I think ultimately it's easy to pick and pick and pick. I think what we need to focus on, and I'm going to close it here, is the fact that the Ottawa Senators admitted they're wrong, clearly and immediately tried to rectify their mistake, and are listening to the fan base to not make this mistake again. So I'm not going to be overly harsh on Cyril Leader. That was a tough spot for him to be in. But I do think we need more clarification, because I think his responses still left a lot of gray area, a lot of, confusion, particularly, again, with the no clause for the team to be moved. Of course, the objective of the goal of the Ottawa Senators in Quebec City. The only clear thing we got that kind of reassures me is the fact that they are not looking for other alternatives to Le Breton Flats right now. And of course, him acknowledging that the Spartacat thing was a massive mistake. We got a lot more questions than answers out of that interview. So again, I think we desperately need Michael Andlauer to speak to the Sens fan base directly, to address the concerns, to address the gray area, and most of all, to address what the Ottawa Senator goal is concretely in Quebec City. If it's to bring an NHL team to Quebec City, tell us that. If it's to build a fan base in Quebec City, tell us that. If it's to build the broadcasting rights and to expand our region, tell us that. It can't be all three. It just can't. You can't say for the 1,000th time, we're trying to build a market, but we're also trying to bring another team to that market. It just doesn't make any sense. So we need to know what the true objective is in Quebec City. How does this help the Ottawa Senators? How does this help our community here in Ottawa? That's what we need to hear directly from Michael Andlauer to understand what their goal is. That still isn't very clear, and I think it's, again, a step in the right direction from Ian Mendes and Cyril Leader to immediately address this head on and to acknowledge their faults and to listen to the fan base and their feedback. But again, a lot of this stems from mismessaging, and I think it can all go away with a clear, concise message from the top dog, Mikey A. Anlauer. So with that, let me know what you think in the comment section down below. I'll just say this. No issues again with the preseason games there. No issues again with the training camp. And especially no issues with the Francophone community being reached out to. I think that's something this organization has not done enough of until Michael Anlauer came to the fold. I think it's great to see they're reaching out to the Francophone community, not only here, but abroad. So I love the fact that we're reaching out to the Francophone community, but we really should be focusing that primarily here in the market where we actually can build a fan base in the Ottawa Gatineau community. So with that, again, let me know what you think in the comment section down below. I know this was a very long video. I do apologize for that. I hope this was a very complicated one, so I do hope this kind of explained the complexity of why, the fan base reacted the way they did. And also, I hope I was fair enough. I tried to be fair and to understand the Sens perspective. I get it. I understand. This is also a business, right? So you want to grow your fan base. You want to grow your broadcast reach. All these things make sense. The messaging just wasn't there, though. So I hope if you're a member of the Sens organization watching this, I hope you understand that this comes from a place of love and a place of constructive criticism. And most of all, a place of passion. I care about this team. I care about the city. I want it to be successful. I want this team to be in the city until the day I die, and past that. So again, this is all meant to just kind of provide feedback to do better and to learn from your mistakes. Again, Michael Anlauer, the Sens organization as a whole, they're just human. Just like us, they made a mistake, and the true testament to that mistake will be how they respond. And so far, in my opinion, so good on that front. But again, a little more clarification would be great, because again, the messaging still, I have a lot of questions, and a lot of those still haven't been answered. So we'll see what happens with that. Again, let me know what you think in the comment section down below. As always, is this overblown or not blown up enough? Let me know down below. And with that, I'll see you on Thursday when Ottawa's back in action against the Washington Capitals here in Ottawa. I'll be at that game because I'm a fan that loves going to the Ottawa Senators games here in Ottawa. All right, that's enough with that. I'll see you all soon. Go Sens, go.